Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today, I've got a big smile on my face because I'm going back to memory lane. I have my old high school history professor, teacher, Mr. Ron Genini, here in the studio. First, Mr. Genini, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And I'm always going to call you Mr. Genini.
You can call me Mr. Genini. I'll let you.
So you were my old history teacher back in the days at Central?
Right. Old in many ways, yes. I was your history teacher. Was it for the California class or the U.S. class?
U.S. class.
For the U.S. class, okay. Yes, I taught California history, I taught United States history, and for a long time I taught modern world, which went from the age of discovery to today. And so I know I had you at least one at U.S. Okay, so you were a junior. Okay.
Talk about how long you taught over at Central, because you know I've got siblings.
I know you. I know you do. By golly, I know you do. I started at Central in 1970. I came from the Bay Area. Was married here in 1969. I was working at Parlier. I decided that didn't work for me, and I left and found an opening at Central. Ironically, my father-in-law, who died in 1957, had taught at Central after World War II and taught there for 7 or 8 years. And so there were people out there in the office who remembered him when I showed up, and I just mentioned. So there was a little connection there. But as to why I came to Fresno, why I came to teach, or whatever, love brought me to Fresno, okay? Say more on that. But I have always, I'll say always, been interested in history. I think it was probably when I was, second grade maybe, my father acquired a huge wall-size map of the world. He worked at Oakland Army Base, and so this was after the war. I was born in 1946, so you can do the math, I say, about second grade. They had these things in surplus, and there was this huge map, and I could see all these countries, all these colonies, all these whatevers, and my imagination would go crazy with this. But he would start to tell me little stories about, like, Columbus or George Washington or what have you, and I was fascinated. And in school, when I saw these things in our textbooks, more fascinated. These stories I'd heard at home. And then I saw some old geography books. I do mean old. They're from around 1900, 1890s, 1900. They're all pre-World War I. And I looked at them, and the maps were different
Than today,
or than they were in the 50s when I saw them. I mean, you had, in Europe, for example, Russian Empire, German Empire, Austria-Hungary, Turkish Empire, just Norway and Sweden, one country. You saw these different countries that,
yeah,
I'd never heard of these. So I became interested in them. And there it went. Just went from there.
I can go so many directions with the statement you just made. I mean, here, your father was telling you these stories, and that piqued your interest. So, what the researchers tell us is correct, that when you get a child and you teach them about things, or you tell them stories, or you sing to them, that stuff sticks.
It does stick. It does stick. It does. That's how we learn.
I wanted you here because I wanted to talk a little bit about World War I. Now, tell us about World War I. What started it?
A gunshot. The official reason was almost 101 years ago. You might recall last June, on June 28th, the newspapers, the TV stations, everywhere, all over the world, they commemorated the 100th anniversary of the start of the First World War. And I'll refer to it as the First War, Second War, meaning World War I, World War II. The actual reason was there was a tension, a buildup of tension that was getting worse and worse. I don't think anyone wanted war. No one except a madman actually wanted war. Even the manufacturers of war machines, like the Krupp factory, didn't necessarily want war. They just wanted to make the machines and have governments buy their products. The nations, after the Napoleonic Wars, ended in 1815, the nations of Europe pretty much kept a peace that didn't allow major war again. Yeah, there were wars, but they only involved 2 or 3 countries at the most, not a mass of countries. You had war, say, between Russia and Turkey, or war between Britain and France with Russia, or you might have war between the wars of Italian unification against Austria, or the Franco-Prussian War. But they were single wars.
It was never one group versus one group.
Right, not as it had been with Napoleon. And they didn't want that again. And so they kept the peace. And for 100 years they kept the peace. And by the time World War I started, people thought, they're never going to do this again. It's not going to happen again. We've grown out of that. We've grown out of it. But they didn't. we saw what happened there. The German Kaiser, William II, had been born with a deformed arm. And he always felt a little less than the other boys or than his brothers coming. He had to be tougher. He had to be tougher. He pushed harder and harder and harder, and he always had an inferiority complex, because no matter how hard he pushed, he always knew that he wasn't quite right.
In his
view, and probably the way other people thought too, but they wouldn't have said it to him. He was the emperor after all. So he became super aggressive, but really, he wasn't very brave. He really wasn't. He wanted Germany's place in the sun. Britain had the world's largest empire. His grandma, Queen Victoria, by the time she died, ruled 1/4 of the world's surface.
That's incredible. 1/4.
1/4. The maps in those days used to show the British Empire in pink. And if no other color, and if you saw pink, you knew it was British territory. You used to say the sun never set on the British Empire, because in every single time zone, it was always daytime. British, it was always some British territory. And so France had a huge empire too. In fact, Otto von Bismarck, who created the German Empire, encouraged France to go into Africa, go into Asia, build an empire. Don't think of revenge against us. Because we stole Alsace-Lorraine from you. Don't think of revenge. Instead, give your attention to building an empire. We don't want one. And so that was okay. But the Kaiser fired Bismarck, and he decided he was going to do it his own way. And so challenge France to empire. Challenge England to empire. Challenge England on the seas. England had the biggest navy in the world. By God, he was going to have a bigger one. And so the challenge comes. He decides to start building ships rapidly, as rapidly as they could. And the British saw that, and they started building too. So you have this buildup.
I want to stop you there and ask a question. I don't mean to throw you off track, but where is the funding coming from this stuff? I mean, I imagine one of these ships...
Where does the funding come from for anything our government does? Look in the mirror, and you'll see where the funding comes from in any place in the world. It comes from taxation. For the people pay for it.
Okay.
Somehow it has to be voted for, or it's just taken, or whatever, but it comes from the people. And you have this buildup. And the Kaiser is aggressive, but like I said, not really a brave man. Get to that, or keep that in mind. The war actually started with the assassination of the Austrian Archduke, Franz Ferdinand. He had gone to Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia, which was very, very restive. They didn't like the Habsburgs. They didn't like him. He didn't like them particularly, but they really didn't like him. And he picked a day that was a holy day in their calendar to come. And it was not just a holy day, but it was a patriotic day. It was a day, I can't figure why they would celebrate this, the day that Serbia was conquered by the Turks in 1389, that they had a big battle, that they had fallen. I wouldn't have celebrated that. I would have celebrated throwing them out, not
having them come in.
But whatever. It was an important day, and some of the Serbs saw this as a slap in the face. And so a Serbian terrorist group, the Black Hand, not to be confused with the Sicilian Mafia, also the Black Hand, but not to be confused with them, but the Black Hand from Serbia, with government assistance, goes across the border, goes to Sarajevo. They find out his route. He's driving along, and out pops one of these assassins, Gavril Princip, bang, bang. He kills the Archduke's wife, Sophie, instantly, poof, shoots him. He dies a few seconds later. Only after he had, said to his wife, "Don't die, live for our children," but they were gone. Princip was sorry he had killed the lady. I want to say empress, but wasn't going to be empress. The Archduchess. He was sorry about that. He hadn't intended to, but oh well.
She was caught in the line of fire.
She was caught in the line of fire. What do they call it? Collateral damage or something like that. And so he's immediately jumped on. They beat the hell out of him, and they drag him to prison.
So they caught him. The person who did the shooting.
They caught him. He
didn't flee.
Just like you to me. You do the shooting. I'm a soldier. I'm here. You're right there. He didn't get away. He didn't get away. No way. It wasn't like the Boston bomber.
When they got caught, this
fellow was caught right there. Fine. He's underage. He's not quite 18, a few weeks shy of 18, and their law didn't permit executing
the minors.
So he's going to be in prison the rest of his life. He had tuberculosis, though, and he would die a couple of years later. And he never was remorseful about the war he had started. When it was pointed out to him how many people have died, how much suffered. Oh, well.
What fascinates me about this story is I don't believe, and you will know this more than anybody, I don't believe the general public knows that this is what started the war. I mean, I never knew this story, that there were more factors. I get that. But the trigger basically was
the trigger was his gun.
Yeah, well,
I just saw that his trigger. Well, all over Europe, people who cared were sorry for the Habsburg family, for the old emperor Franz Joseph. He had ruled Austria for since 1848. He himself was he was born in about 1830. He was ancient. He was 80 or more. He had lost his brother Maximilian in Mexico. His wife had been stabbed by an anarchist on a trip in Switzerland. His son was Rudolph, who was in the Meyerling suicide murder, that scandal. So his family always had problems. And he didn't care for his nephew, the Archduke, Franz. He didn't like him. He personally didn't like him, and he hated his wife. But it was still an attack on his family. And he didn't like the Serbs. And he and his ministers figured this is a good way to slap those so-and-sos. We're going to get them. But what will Russia say? The Tsar of Russia protected the Slavs. And the Serbs were the Russians' little brothers. Well, we'll deal with the Tsar. Don't worry about that. But come back to that in a minute. Tsar Nicholas II, not bright at all, not a smart man at all. No, no, no. Good-natured, very good-natured man, but should never have been an emperor. Never should have been an emperor. Probably shouldn't even have been a mayor of a small town. He really did not like governing things. He left it to other people. But he was also a man who was very, very, very proud, like the Kaiser was. And they were cousins. In fact, Queen Victoria was grandmother to the Kaiser and grandmother to the Tsar's wife, the Empress Alexandra. They were all connected. They were all connected. So why do they fight? Families fight worse than other people. We all know that. If you have a family, you know that.
Yeah.
But the Russians were not going to be counted out. When Austria, with the Kaiser's backing, I hope it's not getting too confusing, but okay. When Austria, with the Kaiser's backing, the Kaiser said basically he'd give them a blank check. Do what you want to those pirates, those thieves, those murderers. Do what you want. We'll back you up. Fine. So Austria gives Serbia an ultimatum saying you've got to purge your army, your government, your everybody of any Austrian feeling. You got to go into your schools and tear up any Austrian, anti-Austrian entries in textbooks. You've got to let us inspect you're doing this. And Russia told Serbia, look, be reasonable, give them what you can, but, you know, be reasonable, but if you need help, we're here.
So they're playing the role of, you can do a little bit, but, you know, don't go too far.
Don't go too far.
And if they cause problems, we've got your back.
That's right. Well, problems were caused. The answer that Serbia gave wasn't satisfactory. No self-respecting nation could have given that kind of answer. That's part of it, okay? And the Austrians knew that, all right?
So they were kind of,
they
pushing. Wanted to push.
They want to push. So the Austrian government says, your answer's not good enough, it's war. And the war started on July 28th. The assassination had been on June 28th. So exactly 1 month later, there it is. Russia says, and when I say names of countries, it's really their rulers, because in those days it really was really their rulers. Russia says to Austria, back out now. And the Tsar mobilizes his troops. He thought it would only be a mobilization against Austria. Unfortunately, the Russian military plan had for one mobilization against Germany and Austria and along the whole frontier. And the Kaiser said, wait, you're on my border. And the Tsar said to his cousin, they exchanged the Willie-Nicky telegrams from Wilhelm and Nicholas. They exchanged these for a day or two. It's nothing personal. We're not aiming at you. We're not aiming at you. We have to do it this way, but we're not aiming at you. Don't worry, we're not going to do you. And the Kaiser said, that's not good enough. Back off. The Tsar says, I can't. All right, fine. Germany declares war on Russia. Boom.
Wow.
Then the Kaiser, the Germans, ask France, which was Russia's ally, what are you going to do about it? And the French response was, we'll do what we have to do. Well, I'm your ally. Our alliance says that if you're attacked by, in this case, Germany, with Austria,
we're coming to
your
your aid.
We're with you, and vice versa. So, okay, the Germans realize they're going to be at war with France, too, so it's a two-front war. This is what Bismarck had always tried to avoid. That's why he was friends with the Tsar's grandfather and father. He was, not friends with the French, but he gave them another area. Go to Africa, go to Asia. But Bismarck had tried to avoid that because you don't have a map here, but you have France here, Germany here, and Russia here. So Germany would be the nut in the nutcracker. Okay. When the Kaiser realized, that's where I say he's not too really brave. He's a big talker, but not that brave. When he realizes what he's done,
Look what I
yeah, he tries to pull off. He tells his military chief, General von Moltke, forget France. Don't just ignore them. Don't declare war. Just keep the troops away. He said, I can't.
Too late.
The way it's set up, they're there. Okay, so you started, buddy. There it is. Now, because of the lay of the land, and because the French weren't stupid, they had forts to keep the Germans out. The easiest way for Germany to invade France would be to go through Belgium, which was a neutral country. Now, going back in 1830, England, France, Prussia, Germany, Russia, and Austria had all guaranteed the neutrality of Belgium, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, guaranteed their neutrality. Britain would not permit the German army or any army to be that close
to their border,
to their coast if they invaded Belgium. And that was meant for both France and Germany. They didn't want that threat. So the Germans asked Belgium, we have to invade France, we have to come through your country, we'll pay you for any damage we do, just let us come through. The King of Belgium says, ha 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 ha, no. Very good then. Germany declared war on Belgium, invaded Belgium to head to France. Then England says, wait a minute, there's this treaty, we guaranteed neutrality.
Between,
That's
Belgium.
right. And the German ambassador to England said, that's just a piece of paper. Are you going to go to war over a piece of paper? Well, surprise, yes. So here we're at August 4th, 1 week after, 1 week to the day. I don't remember.
But were shots fired? I mean, was it 1 week after, I understand, but in between that time,
Austria and Serbia, yeah.
there were shots being
exchanged. They were shooting each other, yeah. They were shooting each other. No shots yet, but that's coming. But within 1 week, you have Austria, Serbia, Russia, France, Germany, Belgium, Britain, okay? You have those in 1 week. And with the size of the British Empire, what else do you have? Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, in those days, Pakistan, South Africa, chunk of Africa, what have you.
So a lot of countries.
Yeah, a lot.
The domino effect is amazing.
It was domino. It was absolutely domino.
All those people, all these lives were lost, and it seems like all it was a simple domino effect of people. You know, it's amazing, and some of it is misunderstanding.
Yes, exactly. And how do others get in? Japan is an ally of Britain's.
So Japan says, all right.
That's right.
You mess with
Germany
Britain.
has colonies in the Pacific. Japan wants them. They go to war with Germany, there. Turkey, which had been somewhat of not an ally, but being protected by Britain against Russia for much of the 19th century, no longer. In 1881-82, the Turkish government started to massacre the Bulgarians. And so they have a long history of this sort of thing.
Well, and that's another interesting thing. So the Turkish, at the time, the Turkish government, Ottoman Empire, goes after the Bulgarians.
Right.
And so how many of them? Do we have estimates?
I have no idea. I learned
quite
that
a
in
few
college. That was a lot of time ago I was in college. But yeah, quite a few. And Britain thought that was abominable. That was terrible. And a lot of British people, we shouldn't be friends with them. The hell with the Sublime Ports. Let the don't let the Russians have them because they'll take Constantinople. But don't protect them. Don't be with them. Well, okay, Britain somewhat washes its hands of any Turkish involvement, and Germany's ready to fill in the gap. Boom. The Kaiser has a plan for a railroad from Berlin to Baghdad. And of course, it has to go through the Turkish Empire for that, a big part of it. And so Germany becomes Turkey's friend. And Turkey, fearing Russia anyway, declares war on Russia and joins with Germany and becomes the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey. Later on, Bulgaria. Now, the Bulgarians did not like the Turks. They didn't care for Austria. They detested Serbia.
Interesting.
Because Serbia had taken land from them that they had won from the Turks in the Balkan Wars. and so Bulgaria becomes one of the Central Powers also. The others were the Allies. The Entente, or the Allies, they were called.
So it seems amazing to me that the domino effect continued to go on, and now
It did.
Turkey is drawn in,
That's right.
becoming allies with Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and they're on the border with Russia.
That's right.
But you know what? We're out of time this week for the program of San Joaquin Spotlight. Hold that thought, because we're going to come back to this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what happens in World War I.
Okay.
Thank you for being here on this edition.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. This is part one of a two-part interview with Ron Genini. Mr. Genini is a former history teacher. He's here talking about World War I and a little bit of World War II. Thank you to the volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. We couldn't do this show without you. Thank you to our audience members listening to this program on 90.7 FM, KFSR Fresno, and those watching on CMAC, Comcast 93, and AT&T 99. We'll be back next week for a new edition and a continuation of this program.